The Los Angeles Chargers are going to be the first real test for Tyson Bagent and this Chicago Bears defense that's been playing really well the last few weeks.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into Crossover Thursday. This is David Droegemeier, host of Locked On Chargers, joined by the Locked On Bears host, Lauren Cox. We are going to go over the biggest storylines, the biggest matchups, and we're going to talk about what each one of these teams need to do in order to win this football game. But before we get into that, this Crossover Thursday episode is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use all lowercase code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Lauren, 2 and 4 teams. 2 and 5 teams here, obviously not getting off to the best start, not the start that any of us imagined or wanted, but here we are. So, getting into this game, biggest storylines, we'll go ahead and start with you. What do you think is the biggest storyline going into this game on Sunday night?
It's funny that they both have the same number of wins, and yet I think some of the feelings around both teams are very different. Like, sure, perhaps both fan bases want to fire their head coaches, but it still feels like people think the Chargers might figure this out still, and no one thinks the Bears are going to figure this out still. But I think individually going into this game, there's two main things for the Bears. One, on offense, it's can undrafted rookie quarterback Tyson Bagent continue what was, an efficient and effective performance against the Raiders. It wasn't like out of this world lighting them up, but like did everything they needed him to do in order to get the job done. And now I think the Chargers offer a little bit bigger of a test than what the Raiders were giving them last week, and that's going to be kind of that next step for him. Like, he doesn't need to be a hero, but can he do a little bit more? And I think defensively, it's a similar story where they had Brian Hoyer, the backup quarterback for the Raiders last week, so the defense feeling pretty good about itself, and they've had a couple of games now where the defense has played well, but against injured offenses and offenses that haven't been very good. And I think Justin Herbert and Keenan Allen and Austin Eckler and company offer a higher level of firepower than the Bears have faced in a handful of games since their defense has been playing better, and will really test this group like, okay, are they actually playing pretty well, or have they just beat up on bad offenses?
Yeah, I mean, hey, you still need to be able to do that. No matter who you're going up against. I mean, I think I've seen just way too many times where the Chargers have gone up against a rookie quarterback or has gone up against a guy that just hasn't played a ton of football in the NFL, and somehow the Chargers defense turns him into a superstar and makes him look like he's a world beater. So, I mean, I know Chargers fans are definitely going to be a little bit more cautious going into this game, especially because, I mean, I think Tyson played really, really well. Although, I will say, it did seem like they were really simplifying the game plan for him. A lot of quick throws, a lot of screens, a lot of trying to get the ball out of his hands quickly, not a lot of plays down the field. Do you foresee that kind of being the same thing in this one?
Yeah, I think for Tyson, it's like keep doing that until they stop it, right? Like, sure. He had the lowest average depth of target of any quarterback in week 7. Like, he was 6 yards downfield was the average depth of his throws. Like, he had one pass attempt more than 15 yards downfield. And yeah, you feel like, eventually you're going to need to throw downfield, but you don't need to throw downfield until you actually need to. And until the defense forces you to need to, like until you stop winning by throwing short, then I think the Bears strategy is we're going to run the ball and we're going to throw short. And then if you can stop us doing that, then we'll start to we'll try to throw a little bit more downfield, and that's when we'll see how it goes. And that's where kind of the Bagent question marks start to creep in. He's very good at the throwing short, but so are a lot of quarterbacks in the NFL.
Yeah. Well, fortunately, he's got a ton of weapons to kind of get the ball to, and guys that can really create. But I think talking about the Chargers here, the biggest storyline going into this game is, can the Chargers win a must-win game? I mean, this is absolutely a must-win game here. The Chargers absolutely cannot go to 2 and 5. If that happens, the season's probably over, and Brandon Staley might get fired. I say that just, with the, obviously expectations that the Chargers had going into this season, but they really don't fire coaches in the middle of the season. It just doesn't happen. They pretty much allow their coaches to get their 4 years in and see where the chips are falling after the season. I know a lot of Charger fans don't want to hear that, but that's just the reality of how the Chargers organization operates. But The Chargers absolutely have to win this football game. Can they go out there and can they win convincingly? I mean, their 2 wins have been a combined 11 points of, and that's just not going to get it done. I mean, and I think the Chicago Bears, regardless of their record, I think they're playing pretty good football. I think, this is going to be a bigger challenge than a lot of Charger fans are expecting in this one, but can the Chargers win a must-win game here on Sunday Night Football? I think that's the biggest question going into this one.
See, I'm curious about that because I think of the Chargers 2-4 as being a lot different than the Bears 2-4 in terms of the teams that they've played, right? I look at the Chargers and see, like, okay, they lost to the Dolphins, one of the best teams in the NFL, lost to the Cowboys, up and down, but like one of the better playoff caliber teams in the NFL, and the Chiefs, one of the best teams in the NFL. The Titans loss in overtime is the one where you have some questions here, but it's like
that one hurts.
Yeah, they got beat by good teams though, right? It's not like they're losing to the bottom of the barrel NFL rosters. And of course, they beat 2 of the teams that, you'd think if you're a decent team, you should be able to beat. So I find myself wondering, people get so down on the Chargers, but at the same time, it's like they've lost to 3 teams that I would kind of expect them to lose to, even if they were playing really, really well. And the fact that they were still pretty close against the Cowboys and pretty close against the Dolphins, like, I can talk myself into the Chargers while everyone is also clearly talking themselves out of the Chargers and ready to let the whole sky fall in Los Angeles.
Yeah, honestly, Lauren, it just has everything to do with the expectations around this team. And I mean, the contracts that they restructured in the offseason, bringing back Joey Bosa, restructuring Mike Williams, restructuring Keenan Allen, Khalil Mack. I mean, to really kind of bring this core together and have them together for another year, because last year the vision really didn't get a chance to unfold the way they wanted it to because of all the injuries that they had faced. And unfortunately, the injury bug, as it does every single other team, has hit them again this year. I mean, they're without their number 1 center, an all-pro in Corey Linsley. They have obviously, missing Mike Williams, who's out for the rest of the season with a torn ACL. And so I think this Chargers offense, which is another kind of storyline for me, is can they figure it out in the second half? Can they actually put together a full 4 quarters against any football team? I mean, it's just, there's been way too many lulls in the second half where they go 3 and out, where they can't stay on the field, where they don't have sustained drives. So can they stay on the field and can they play complementary football? I think is the next storyline that I'm going to be keeping a very close eye on.
I'm glad you mentioned the injuries, because that's one of those things that was, once we get into the matchups here a little bit, there's a few guys on both of these teams that didn't practice on Wednesday, but have been playing in recent games, or maybe are limited in practice, that I think, if this guy's not going to play, how does that change the dynamics of this one? And I think we're starting to get to that point of the season where health can have just as big an impact on the outcome as the regular one-on-one matchups you might expect.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything on the defensive side that, going into this game that you're kind of looking at storyline wise that, you think could have an impact on this game?
You mean from the Bears defense?
Yeah, from the Bears defense. Yes.
Honestly, like, some of it's just a health question. Both of their starting safeties are injured right now. And they got a lot of backups that have been playing a lot on the back end, but really the story of this Bears defense has been the lack of pass rush all season long. We knew coming in they wouldn't have a very good pass rush, and even in the games that they've won, they haven't had a very good pass rush. So they've had to blitz a little bit more, but when they've had injuries in the secondary, you got a lot more one-on-one for rookies and undrafted free agent type guys. And so, like, they've started to get healthier, and it looks like we're trending even farther in the right direction as we start this week. But, we kind of got to see how the rest of the week goes and what percentage you're going to get guys, even if they do play injured.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely something that the Chargers and Charger fans are looking at too. A couple of guys, especially, wide receiver Joshua Palmer, I think is a guy that they're really leaning on quite a bit. I'm sure we'll talk about that a little bit more when we get into the matchups for this game, and we are going to get into those matchups right after this. But first, I got to tell you guys about one of my favorite things ever, and that is DoorDash. Why root for your team on an empty stomach? Order on DoorDash and save on football. Watch your favorites. One of the best things about DoorDash is finding the hidden gems in your community and get them delivered right to you. I love scrolling DoorDashes and helping find places to try to support local restaurants. Today, the local restaurant that I'm locked on is Sunday Gravy. If you live near SoFi or the surrounding area and you need something to keep you fueled up while you're watching football, get Sunday Gravy delivered right to your doorstep. They have the best garlic cheese bread in town and some fresh Italian food that you have to try if you haven't already. Right now, you can save as well since you listen to this show. Get 50% off of DoorDash, up to $10 when you spend 15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKEDON23, subject to change, terms apply. That's 50% off, up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. You download the DoorDash app and enter the code LOCKED23, subject to change, terms apply. All right, guys, we're back here on Crossover Thursday. Locked On Chargers host David Droegemeier here with Lauren Cox of Locked On Bears, and we got to talk a little bit more about this Sunday night primetime matchup here. Got to get into the biggest matchups going into this game. Lauren, again, I think I'll go ahead and swing this over to you. As far as the biggest matchups that you're looking at going into this game that you think could have a deciding factor on how this game ends out, where you're going first?
I'll sort of combine two here. It's both of the Bears offensive tackles versus both of the Chargers edge rushers. Like, I know every team that goes against the Chargers are always afraid of Bosa and Mack, but the Bears' weakness on the offensive line is particularly at the tackle spots. You got a backup left tackle right now in Larry Borum. Their starter Braxton Jones is on injured reserve and just activated his 21-day practice window. Not expecting him to play this week. I think that's probably a little bit generous, but he was limited at practice on Wednesday. So never say never, but
right.
I at this point, I would be surprised if he plays, but we'll see. So if it's the backup at left tackle, that's always going to be a concern against either of those two guys. And then the right tackle, Darnell Wright, he's a rookie 10th overall pick this year, has played decently this season, some up and downs, but this last game against the Raiders, you could tell he was playing with one arm for most of the second half. He could not use his left arm trying to block Max Crosby. And it go super well. And so if he's going to,
it never does.
if he's going to go one arm against Mack and Bosa, and however they want to rotate those guys around the defensive line, not great. He missed practice on Wednesday with what's listed as shoulder/toe injury. So we're doubling up on your right tackle. If he's going to miss the game, they would be on their fourth string tackle at right tackle and their regular backup at left tackle, or maybe they take their backup left tackle and move him to the right side if the starting left tackle can come back. But like those are going to be messy tackle spots regardless of the opponent. And the fact that it's this caliber of an opponent scares a lot of Bears fans this week.
Yeah, I think going into this one, I think Bears fans absolutely have to be worried when they get into 3rd and long situations, because that's when the Chargers like to deploy their, absolute beast package when they go out there and they throw out Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, Tuli Tuipulotu, the rookie 2nd-round pick, who's been an absolute monster this year, and on the inside, Morgan Fox. When those 4 guys rush the quarterback at the same time, they have one of the highest success rates in the NFL. So you definitely want to stay out of those 3rd and long situations, because if those guys get that situation and get in that situation and they're allowed to pin their ears back and come after that rookie quarterback, then it's going to spell bad news for the most part. I think for me, as far as go ahead, Lauren, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, that's precisely what works so well for Tyson Bagent against the Raiders, is they stayed out of those 3rd and longs. They ran really well and threw it short and avoided penalties. So it was always 3rd and 4, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2, and they just 10-12 play drive you down the field. And that's going to be the game plan again for the Chargers, to try and neutralize that pass rush, but easier said than done.
Sure, absolutely. But I mean, the Chargers have to do a good enough job to get into those 3rd and long situations. That means they're going to have to stop the run, which I know the Chicago Bears are going to run the bejesus out of the football. They do it more than pretty much anybody in the NFL. So you got to expect Freeman to be coming at you. Their second running back also has a lot of speed, a lot of wiggle. That from what I was watching on tape, he's a guy that can really, really get, north and south very, very, very quickly. So I think for me, one of the biggest matchups I'm looking at, because of the fact that the Bears like to get the ball out of that quarterback's hands quickly, it's DJ Moore versus Asante Samuel Jr. and Michael Davis. Wide receiver ones have torched the Chargers. I mean, it has been very, very bad. No matter if you're talking about Tyreek Hill or Devontae Adams or Justin Jefferson. I mean, it just does, or, Travis Kelce, most recently, it doesn't really matter who it is. Number one, wide receivers have had way, way too much success against the Chargers. So a big part of this will be how the Chargers, choose to defend those guys. You can't give those guys 10-yard cushions like they did to Travis Kelce in the first half. that just can't happen. You cannot allow that. You have to be aggressive going against these Bears wide receivers, because a lot of this offense, like you mentioned, is predicated on getting the ball into a receiver's hands and letting them go work up the field. So I'm looking at DJ Moore, who is one of the better receivers in the league, going up against Asante and Michael Davis.
Now, when they've had trouble with those number one wide receivers, how much of that is that guy is getting way too wide open and then getting a lot of those yards before the catch, versus they allow the catch and then it's guys missing tackles or being out of position after the catch to let those, what could just be a short gain, become a long gain?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of that really is just given too much cushion. I think for the most part, this Chargers team does a pretty decent job of tackling in space, and I think they have really gotten a lot better in that avenue and in that aspect of things. I think last year, and honestly, I'm a little bit thankful they're going up against this style of quarterback, because the Chargers have given up way too many explosive plays. I mean, way too many 20, 30, 40 plus yard, pass plays down the football field. That's not really going to be the game plan here with the Chicago Bears. They're going to try to, dink and dollar and dime you to death all the way down the football field. And against the Raiders, they had a ton of success. But you mentioned the Chargers edge rushers versus the Bears tackles. I mean, that has to be something that you pay attention to in this one. But I think I'm also looking at the Chargers running game. That's one thing that has just completely disappeared. I mean, I think they had a pretty good performance against the Chiefs, but without Austin Eckler, they haven't really gotten anything going. And I think that has a large part to do with their inefficiency and their just, inconsistency on the offensive side. That's why they've been evaporated in the second half, because they put way too much on Justin Herbert's shoulders. Justin Herbert is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, but he can't do it all by himself. I mean, he's got a fractured finger on his left hand, which is definitely looks like, looking at the numbers, has impacted kind of how he's played. It's been uncomfortable. At least he's missed throws that he usually just does not miss. So hopefully another week of some health will help him out. But if the Chargers running game does not get going, they're going to turn into a one-dimensional offense once again, and they're going to disappear in the second half once again. That's
been like the biggest strength of this Bears defense pretty much all season, but especially in the last 4 or 5 games. They have been able to shut down opposing running games. It's been the most consistent group for them up front. Absolutely. And then sometimes they'll be too easy in the back end on coverage, but if they can, it's made it easy, because then you could force a guy like Brian Hoyer to have to beat you with his arms. Or 2 weeks ago, they played the Vikings without Justin Jefferson. So it was like shut down their running game and try and make the rest of those receivers beat you. And they did, but they got some defense. They got a defensive touchdown, some other things about it. Like they've been against teams that, if you shut down the running game, their offense doesn't have a lot else to really be excited about. And the Chargers are not that case. Like, this is one of those games where it's like, okay, shut down the running game. Yeah, it makes Justin Herbert's job more difficult, but I'd still be just as concerned as I was with or without a running game of what Herbert's going to do and being able to throw downfield against this secondary that, again, if they're healthy, I'm not as scared about, but it's just a big question of what that looks like. Because Eddie Jackson missed last week with a foot injury, and he's been kind of in and out of the lineup and not necessarily 100% when he's out there. Their other safety, Jaquan Brisker, had a concussion last week, but left the game, but then was cleared right after it. Now he's listed as injured with illness. So we'll see how that comes together. I'm not really sure what the deal is there. And one of the other backup cornerbacks also has mono, and he's out for a little while. So Jalen Johnson's healthy, and the other corner, like all 3 corners are finally healthy for the first time all season. And now it's the guys in the back end that need to take that top away from make Justin Herbert throw it short. And I think you can survive a little bit better as a defense, but you can't let these guys get behind you and get the explosive plays over the top.
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of reminds me of one other matchup that I am curious about, and it's Austin Eckler as a receiver against the Chicago Bears linebackers and their secondary, because I think that's one thing that the Chargers have not utilized nearly enough lately is getting him involved as a pass catcher. He's one of the best pass catching running backs in the NFL. He's a huge weapon in that regard, and that really has not been part of the game plan for Kellen Moore's offense throughout, the first couple of games of this season. I really obviously think that needs to change in this one. You can't have a weapon of that caliber, a touchdown machine that doesn't get the ball in his hands and the receiving aspect of things. That absolutely has to be a part of this game plan. You got to get him in space, because he's a chain mover for sure.
That's one of the keys in this Bears defense is, like, the first 3 or 4 weeks of the season, they led the NFL in missed tackles. They were missing tackles across the board, and it was abysmal. The last 2 or 3 games, they've been really clean tackling. And is that a result of, okay, you're playing the Raiders and the Vikings without Justin Jefferson, and there aren't like a lot of big time tackle breakers on those teams right now, or have they actually started tackling better? And again, like the storyline, the Chargers will be that test for the Bears. It's like, okay, are you tackling better or just playing bad teams? Well, the Chargers will be a good enough team that can kind of tell you either way. And, is this defense really making that progress, or are the Chargers going to expose them a little bit as not making nearly as much progress as we thought? And it's these kind of matchups that'll really decide that for us.
Absolutely. Well, hey, we're gonna head into segment number 3 here, talking about the most important players and what each one of these teams have to do in order to win this football game. And we're gonna get into that right after this.
This crossover Thursday, Locked On Chargers and Locked On Bears, is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. And if you haven't tried out FanDuel before, now is the time to do it, because right now all new customers are going to get $200 in bonus bets added to your account for free. All you got to do is place a $5 bet. It's guaranteed $200. Whether your bet is right or wrong, you'll get $200 extra dollars. You win the bet, you get your winnings plus 200. You lose the bet, you're still getting $200 added to your account to keep betting with FanDuel. It's just $5 on anything. Maybe this Bears-Chargers game. Right now, the Chargers are 8.5-point home favorites. I think that line started at 9 or 9.5, so moving a little bit down. The money line would be Chargers minus 450 straight up, or Bears plus 350 on the upset. The over-under is set at 46.5 points, which is one of the highest over-unders the Bears have seen in a few weeks. There's usually low-scoring Bears games, but going up against a Chargers team that has a high-powered offense and maybe some defensive vulnerability, I don't know if it can be a shootout when Tyson Bagent's throwing short, but there's the possibility for a shootout here. And that's what our friends at FanDuel see in this game. You got to try it out for yourself. To get your $200 in bonus bets, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get this season rolling the right way. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. A crossover Thursday is also brought to you by Jase Medical, makers of the Jase Case. The Jase Case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. It's great to always be prepared with your Jase Case. I've got one that really gives you some nice peace of mind, because you fill out just a simple online form, and in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians, and then boom, you've got the antibiotics you need to keep yourself at your best. Because you look around, there have been supply chain shortages. Sometimes you go to the doctor, you get the prescription, you go to the pharmacy, they can't get the antibiotics all the time. They'll get a shipment of it, and they'll have it for a little while, and then it'll be out, it'll be back, it'll be out. With Jase, you've already got them on hand, so you're not going to be unprepared. You can be empowered to care for yourselves and your loved ones during the unexpected. You want to try it for yourself? Come check it out. Get yourself a Jase Case. Head on over to jasemedical.com and enter in our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout for a $20 discount on your order. That's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com.
All right, we are back here on this crossover Thursday episode. Locked On Chargers host David Droegemeier, joined by Locked On Bears host Lauren Cox, and we got to get into the most important players and what each one of these teams need to do to win this football game. I think the most important player for the Chargers is Justin Herbert. I mean, Justin Herbert has not looked like himself the last few games. I think that injury is definitely playing a factor in that. 4 passing touchdowns, 4 interceptions in his last 4 games. Feel like this could possibly be a bounce back game. I mean, it is a pretty decent Bears defense they're going up against. I mean, you touched on the injuries in the back end. If they are not at full strength, I definitely expect Justin Herbert to try to target that for sure.
I think if I'm looking at the most important player on the Bears, I mean, obviously the quarterback is always where it starts there, but I'll go slightly from that. And I might even say Darnell Wright, the right tackle, only because, if you got one backup at left tackle, you can help them out with tight ends. You can have the running backs help on that side. You can shift your protections to that left side. Like, you can, if you have one bad tackle or one bad lineman in general, like, you can mask that in some ways and help them out and try and help that go. So then you need your rookie right tackle to be not the one bad and not the second bad tackle in this game. And a lot of that's just going to come down to health more than anything else. I think we kind of know what he is, but also in the running game too. Like, he's an enforcer. He's a road grader. He's a guy who likes to lead at the point of attack. And when he's trying to block with one arm, especially against somebody like Khalil Mack and Bosa too, like, those guys are, as much as we talk about their pass rush, we criminally underrate their run defense. Like, they're so good in that
Absolutely.
area. But of course, sacks get you paid, and that's the sexy.
Oh yeah, it's the
You get a lot
sexy stats, right?
Yeah. You don't get the run defense highlights as much, except for the occasional tackle for loss. But like
Sure.
the way they can just set the edge and redirect runs back inside is so important for this Chargers defense. And to have a healthy tackle that can try and go blow for blow with two of the best players at their position. I mean, to me, that's like the one spot. It's weird that a right tackle is like the most important spot on an offensive line, but in a game like this, I think it's really going to come down to what they can get out of him, because his backup is, if they have to go with two backups, that's going to be a disaster. It is not. No team should be starting two backup tackles. Like, no one's going to have a good number 4 tackle, but like it's really not going to be pretty. And that makes Tyson Bagent's job all the much more difficult. The running game all the more difficult. And if they can't run, that makes it worse for Bagent. And there's that ripple effect across the team.
Yeah, no question about it. I think one thing that can help at least Tyson Bagent in that situation is the fact that he's pretty mobile. I mean, it seemed like he can move around pretty well. Like, he was getting first downs with his legs and extending plays with his legs. So, I mean, it feels like he definitely has that element that the Chargers have to respect in his game. As far as what the Chargers have to do in this game to win, I touched on it a little bit earlier, but it's playing complementary football. Great first half on offense, terrible second half against the Chiefs. The defense got absolutely shredded in the first half, but played much, much better in the second half, only giving up 1 touchdown. And also special teams played great most of the game, but then gave up a 50-yard punt return, which pretty much put the dagger in the Chargers' comeback attempt there. They haven't played well in 4 quarters all season. They absolutely have to avoid the lulls in the offense. They have to put consistent drives together throughout this game. It can't just be a first half situation. They have to do it in the third quarter. Absolutely got to do it in the fourth quarter. They got to play complementary football from the offense, defense, and special teams if they want to come out with the victory on Sunday night. What about the Bears? What do the Bears have to do to win this football game on Sunday night?
Yeah, I think it's a different version of the same kind of complementary football. I think the Bears need to generate turnovers in order to win this game. I think that's what Tyson Bagent needs, right? Like, he needs the defense to help him out a little bit with good field position and with extra possessions. I know, like, Justin Herbert has not historically been a super reckless quarterback, but 3 interceptions in the last 2 games. And I know they're not always like bad throw or bad decisions and tip passes and stuff. Like, still, if it's luck or whatever it is, have a couple more turnovers in these recent games. If the Bears can get 1 or 2 of those, because with this Bears offense, like, you can't dink and dunk your way 80 yards down the field every drive. Like, most offenses can't do 14 plays, 80 yards.
Yeah, you need some big plays in there. Yeah.
Yeah, you end up making a mistake here, there, or there's a penalty. Like, it's hard to do death by 1,000 paper cuts. So that works when you get the interception at midfield. So you start with the ball at 40, and then you can dink and dunk your way 40 yards in 5 plays. And you get a couple of those, or a big special teams return. Like, you need better field position, largely based on turnovers, to not have to make Bagent and maybe a slow rolling offense have to go the length of the field every time. But if the Chargers can just perfectly take care of the ball and kind of play the field position game and make the Bears maybe have to throw downfield a little bit more, like, you don't need to like go crazy on this Bears team by any means. Just play smart. Don't beat yourself and make Tyson Bagent have to beat you. He still has to prove that he can really do that, because the Raiders did a lot of beating themselves last week. That helped.
They do that. Yeah. Yeah, they definitely do that. But you're absolutely right. I mean, the Chargers cannot, give the ball away and give, short fields to a rookie quarterback that is not going to be throwing the ball deep down the football field. It's going to be about who is going to be able to execute and who's going to be able to play clean football, not turn the ball over and punch it in the end zone when they get those opportunities. You absolutely have to do that. We're going to see which 2-win team is going to pick up their 3rd win on Sunday Night Football. I am very much looking forward to this game. I know on Locked On Chargers, we're going to get into some keys for success and get into our bold and game predictions. What do you guys got planned for your Friday show going into this one?
Yeah, we do. On Fridays, we put together a game plan for a Bears success. So we look at not only the matchups, but like the plays, what style of running, what style of passing, where can the Bears find some advantages here to attack this area of the field offensively and defend this area of the field defensively, try and put your offense in a good position to succeed, put their offense in a position to fail. Like that sort of stuff we always get into every Friday.
All right, so that sounds like that could be educational for Charger fans and for Bears fans. So make sure and check out the Locked On Bears podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, and check out Lauren Cox on X or Twitter, whatever you call it, at Cox Sports 1. And of course, check out the Locked On Chargers podcast. Like I said, we'll be getting into the keys for success, get into our bold and game predictions, and make sure and follow your podcast wherever you get them. Follow me on Twitter at DroTalkSD. But that is going to wrap things up for this Crossover Thursday episode. Thank you guys so much for checking this out, and we will catch you next time. Take it easy.